Yo, what is up guys, Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, Naoya Inoue defeats Paul Butler by an 11th round stoppage to become the new undisputed champion in the bantamweight division. Congrats to Naoya Inoue. Obviously, having Undisputed is a great accolade to have on your resume, and, you know, considering the level of talent in which I believe Inoue has, I am pleased that he now has attained that. But in all honesty, this fight was extremely easy for Naoya Inoue. In fact, I would go as far as saying he more than likely had harder spars leading up to this fight. I'm not really going to talk in too much detail about this fight because it was what it was. You know, it was as one-sided as an amputee's dance routine. Let's be honest, Inoue in this fight never had to get out of first gear. But I've seen like the response to this fight on social media, mainly from like British commenters, I guess. And I see the usual sort of tweets and whatnot. You know, when these sort of fights happen, when like a British fighter fights a fight in which they're expected to lose. You know the meme, oh, he was so brave, so courageous. There was a lot of that on social media in regards to Paul Butler's performance. Oh, he did really well to get to round 11, that sort of thing. Well, I have to say, you know, in my opinion, there was nothing admirable about Paul Butler's performance. This was an undisputed title fight. You know, the biggest fight of Paul Butler's career. And again, I know, he went into this fight as a massive underdog. He was overmatched, I get that, but still, the circumstances remain the same. The biggest fight of his career, fighting for all of the marbles. You know, a chance to create one of the biggest upsets in boxing history. You know, for certain fighters that would fire them up to actually go for it, to actually try. To try and give Inoue at least some trouble. But Paul Butler, he never came into this fight with that sort of energy. Paul Butler fought like a guy. You know when you get like a highly touted prospect start out in the pros? Paul Butler basically fought like one of those capable journeymen who is there purely not to get knocked out and who is there to take the prospect rounds. That's exactly how Paul Butler fought this fight. He didn't try to win. He was negative. He barely threw back. And he was in survival mode basically from the first round. And again, I appreciate that he was a huge underdog against a massive puncher, against a bigger guy. I appreciate that. But again, you have to look at the circumstances, and this was an undisputed title fight. And that's the way he approached it. I would understand if he took that approach maybe in the first half and then went for it. That would make sense because, you know, Inoue, there was a lot of talk on social media that he was struggling to make weight this time around. So it would make sense for Paul Butler maybe to start slow, try to absorb punches on the gloves, make Inoue miss, and then maybe come back with something in the second half. That would make sense, but he never even did that, you know, as the rounds went on. As he was extending Inoue into the later rounds, he never once really tried to fire back with any punches of significance. It was totally uninspiring. But again, that's hardly surprising when Joe Gallagher is in the corner. You know, he's quite famous for do nothing for 10 rounds and then maybe come on strong in the end. Well, Paul Butler never even came on strong in this fight towards the end. He was there purely to survive. Fighting kind of, he was actually doing a pretty good job of absorbing the headshots on his guard. Sometimes he'd make Inoue miss, but Inoue was finding the body throughout. He was pushing Butler back with a jab, and he was winning every single round, without doubt. Inoue won every round until the knockout. Inoue finished it in round 11 with a combination which I believe started to the head and came down to the body. Landed a few body shots. Paul Butler then found the canvas in round 11 and he didn't get up for the count. He stayed down. I think it was I'm pretty certain it was a body shot that did the damage. So yeah, I mean, another Joe Gallagher special. I would have had so much more respect for Paul Butler if he just went in there and fought like a fucking idiot and just went for it early on, at least then I would have known he would have tried. But I don't think he tried in this fight to win. I think he tried to go the distance as some sort of moral victory, but I'm glad he got stopped, because a performance like that shouldn't be rewarded in any way. Not even a moral victory. So I'm glad Inoue stopped him, because again, for me, that type of performance doesn't deserve any credit. Not even a sliver of credit. So yeah, if Paul Butler made the distance, there would have been people out there giving this guy some sort of credit. So I'm glad he got stopped. Negative, dull, boring, uninspiring from Paul Butler. But thankfully, Inoue got rid of him. People are going to ask questions in regards to why it took Inoue so long. Well, when you've got a guy who's not... It wasn't that he was just backpedaling. He was backpedaling and doing nothing. He wasn't throwing. He was there purely to survive. He wasn't trying to outbox Inoue on the back foot. He was there purely not to get knocked out. And when you're fighting a guy like that, even if he's several levels below you, sometimes it can be hard to stop a guy like that. Not only that, I think Inoue realised very early on that Butler had nothing that would remotely trouble him in terms of power, things of that nature. He realised he wasn't really throwing, and he was content really just to kind of follow him around the ring, try to land that single right hand, chip away to the body, that sort of thing. And I just think that Paul Butler was so uninspiring that it kind of infected Inoue's performance, because again, Paul Butler was so negative that I'm sure that probably took away the adrenaline and the hype in which Inoue was feeling, And not only that, Inoue, there's been talk that he's been struggling to make weight. It is what it is. I think there's a few reasons why Inoue didn't stop Butler at maybe as early as we expected. But mainly it was because Butler was being so negative in this fight. Again, for me, that sort of performance shouldn't be cheered or appreciated. It should be ridiculed and frowned upon, because ultimately this is a spectator sport, and Paul Butler sucked the energy out of this event, and it wasn't particularly fun to watch. And I love watching Inoue fight, but this one was what it was. It was what it was. But Inoue won every round, had no trouble, knocked him out. So Inoue did his thing. I'm not going to take it out on Inoue. It is what it is. But the interesting thing from here, now Inoue's become undisputed, where does he go from here? Well, more than likely I would assume he's going to move up to super bantamweight. There's really not much for him in the bantamweight division at this point in time. The only fight, listen, let's be real, the undisputed fight, the real undisputed fight, should have been Inoue versus Casemiro. But obviously John Real Casemiro got his belt stripped from him by the WBO, and they inexplicably gave it to Paul Butler. I would have liked to have seen that fight rather than Butler. At least Casemiro would have swung like a madman and gone for it. But maybe Inoue could take that fight at bantamweight. But quite frankly, I've kind of lost my appetite for that fight at this point in time. Casemiro's been dicked around by the politics of boxing. And I don't think his head's really in the game right now. So I'd rather leave that fight alone. And honestly, I'd rather see Inoue go to super bantamweight, because there's good fights for him at super bantamweight. Of course, there are two unified champions, Stephen Fulton, who has the WBC and WBO super bantamweight titles, and also Murodjon Akhmadaliev, who has the IBF and WBA. Now, I would love to see both of those fights. I think they are both tremendous fights for Naoya Inoue, and great for us fight fans. Though, I will say, I think Stephen Fulton might be moving up. I saw something on social media that indicated that, so maybe Inoue could fight for one of those vacant titles if Fulton does move up. Maybe the WBC, for example, vacant title between Luis Nery and Naoya Inoue. That could be a good fight. But realistically, I think the fight for me at super bantamweight would be Murodjon Akhmadaliev. For whatever reason, I think he is more likely to take the fight rather than Stephen Fulton. You know, Stephen Fulton being with the PBC. And Inoue having ties to Top Rank. So yeah, I think the Akhmadaliev fight might be the easiest to make. And stylistically, that one would be a barn burner because Akhmadaliev's a guy who is blessed with athletic ability. He loves to lead with power shots. He takes risks. He actually hits relatively hard as well. Unconventional style. I think him versus Inoue would be a great fight. And if I could make one fight next, more than likely that would be the fight. But there are some other fights out there for him. Like I said, maybe Fulton could be persuaded to stay at Super Bantam and they could get that fight on. I see that as unrealistic though. Lewis Neary is knocking around. That could be a good fight. So there are fights out there for him. But yeah, share your thoughts below. What did you make of this fight? Peace.